My brother Richard's name lit up my phone screen at 6:30 in the morning. I almost didn't answer. We hadn't spoken in 3 months. Not since Thanksgiving, when he'd made another scene about Dad supposedly favoring me. But something made me swipe to accept the call. David. Richard's voice was tight, controlled. The lawyer voice he used when he was about to deliver bad news. I need you to sit down for this. Dad had a massive stroke last night around midnight. He's at Memorial Hospital in the ICU. My coffee cup stopped halfway to my mouth. Across the kitchen table, my father looked up from his scrambled eggs, his eyebrows raised in question. I put my finger to my lips. What? I managed to sound appropriately shocked. How bad is it? The doctors say it's severe. Right side paralysis. Can barely speak. But here's the thing, David. Richard paused, and I could hear papers rustling. Before the ambulance came, Dad was lucid for a few minutes. He signed emergency power of attorney over to me. He also signed documents transferring Morrison Construction to me completely. You understand what I'm saying? The business is mine now. I watched my father's face as he listened, that small smile playing at the corner of his mouth. The same smile he'd given me 6 months ago when he'd first told me about Richard's calls, the pressure, the manipulation attempts. Richard, I said slowly, are you absolutely certain about this? I have the signed documents right here. Dad's signature, witnessed by the night nurse and the ER doctor. It's all legal, all binding. I'm sorry it had to happen this way, but Dad made his choice. Morrison Construction belongs to me now. I'll need you to clear out your office by Friday. We can discuss severance when you're ready to think straight. Across from me, Dad was shaking his head slowly, that smile growing wider. He reached for his coffee with a perfectly steady hand. That's remarkable, I said, keeping my voice level. Because Dad is sitting right across from me having breakfast. Has been for the past 20 minutes. He seems pretty healthy for someone who supposedly had a massive stroke 7 hours ago. The silence on the other end of the line stretched for 5-10 seconds. What? Richard's voice cracked slightly. Dad's right here. Would you like to speak to him? More silence. Then, that's impossible. I was at the hospital. I saw him. The doctor confirmed. Richard, my father's voice was strong and clear as he leaned toward my phone. I don't know who you saw at Memorial Hospital last night, but it wasn't me. I've been home watching the History Channel and eating popcorn. David came over around 10, and we've been here ever since. The sound on the other end was something between a gasp and a choke. But I have documents. Signed documents. Your signature. Forged documents, you mean? Dad said calmly. Which means you've just confessed to forgery, fraud, and attempted theft of a multi-million-dollar company. On a recorded line, I might add. David, you did press record on your phone when you answered, didn't you? I held up my phone, showing the recording app that had been running since Richard's first words. Started it the second I saw his name, Dad. The call ended abruptly. Dad leaned back in his chair and took a long sip of coffee. Well, he said, I suppose we should call James Patterson now. James Patterson, my father's attorney for 30 years, arrived at our house within the hour. Dad and I spent that time going through the files we'd been assembling for the past 6 months, ever since Dad first noticed the irregularities. It had started small. My father, Thomas Morrison, had built Morrison Construction from nothing 42 years ago. 2 trucks and a dream, as he always said. He'd grown it into one of the most respected commercial construction firms in the state, with annual revenues pushing $8 million. He'd planned to retire at 75 and split the business equally between Richard and me. That was the plan, anyway. Richard had joined the firm 20 years ago, fresh out of law school. He handled contracts, legal compliance, regulatory issues. I'd started even earlier, working on job sites since I was 18, eventually becoming project manager and then VP of operations. We'd been a good team, once, but 10 years ago, something changed. Richard started talking about expansion, about taking the company public, about Dad's outdated methods. James Patterson spread the documents across Dad's dining room table now. This is more extensive than we thought, Tom. Richard's been siphoning funds for at least 3 years. These shell corporations, these fake vendor invoices, this is organized fraud. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. Can you prove it in court? I asked. With what you've collected? Absolutely. And this phone call this morning was the cherry on top. He's confessed to forgery on a recorded line. The man's a lawyer. He should know better. He thought he was cornered, Dad said. People make mistakes when they panic. My phone buzzed. A text from Richard. We need to talk. In person. Now. He's panicking, James said. Don't engage yet. Let him sweat. But I knew my brother. The panicking Richard was the dangerous Richard. I need to meet him, I said. Somewhere public. He needs to see this is over. 2 hours later, I sat in a booth at Mallory's Diner on Highway 40, watching Richard's BMW pull into the parking lot. He looked terrible when he walked in. Tie loosened, shirt wrinkled. 10 years younger than me at 58, but right now he looked a decade older. He slid into the booth across from me without greeting. This is a misunderstanding, he started. I held up my hand. Richard, I've been recording everything since your phone call this morning. Right now, this conversation is being recorded. Dad's attorney is listening in real time, so I suggest you think very carefully about what you say next. His face paled. You can't. I can, and I am. Now, you called me. What do you want? He was silent for a long moment, staring at his hands. When he finally looked up, something had shifted in his expression. The panic was gone, replaced by something harder. How long have you known, he asked quietly, about the embezzlement, the shell corporations, the forged medical records? About 6 months. Dad figured it out when he was reviewing quarterly reports and noticed some inconsistencies in vendor payments. Of course he did. Richard laughed bitterly. The old man never misses anything. And you've been playing along this whole time, haven't you? Pretending not to notice. Building your case. We've been documenting everything, yes. So what now? You call the cops? Have your own brother arrested? That depends on you. He looked up sharply. What do you mean? Dad wanted to give you a choice. You can resign from Morrison Construction, repay what you've stolen, sign a confession, and we keep this civil. We sue for the money back, you lose the company, but no criminal charges. Or we turn everything over to the district attorney, and you face fraud charges, embezzlement, forgery, attempted theft. That's 10 to 15 years, Richard. His hands were shaking. You'd do that? Send me to prison? You tried to have Dad declared incompetent. You tried to steal his life's work. You forged documents. You committed fraud. What did you think would happen? I built that company too. 20 years I've given to Morrison Construction. 20 years of contracts and legal work in keeping us compliant and growing the client base. But it was always David this and David that. David who worked the job sites. David who got his hands dirty. David the golden boy. What about me? There it was. The resentment that had been building for years, finally spilling out. Richard, you made $600,000 a year. Dad gave you a quarter ownership stake. You had a corner office, a company car, full benefits. What more did you want? I wanted what was mine. I wanted recognition. I wanted Dad to see that the business side matters just as much as the construction side. But no, it was always you. David understands the clients. David knows how to handle the crews. David will take over when I retire. Dad was planning to split the company 50-50 between us. You know that. Until he saw what I was doing. Until he decided I was the bad son. Richard's voice cracked. Do you know what it's like? Living in your shadow? Perfect David, who never made a mistake. Never disappointed anyone. Never wanted more than what he was given. I thought about my divorce 10 years ago. About how I'd lost my house and half my savings. I thought about my daughter who barely spoke to me anymore because I'd worked too many hours, missed too many recitals. I thought about all the ways I wasn't perfect, all the mistakes Richard had never seen because he was too busy comparing scorecards. I'm not perfect, Richard, but I didn't steal from my own father. He closed his eyes. What does he want me to do? Sign a promissory note for the full amount you've taken. $643,000 plus interest. We have it itemized. Resign from the company, sign a confession. We'll structure a payment plan. 20 years, reasonable interest. You keep your house, your car, your savings. But you're out of Morrison Construction. And if you miss a single payment, we go to the DA with everything. And if I refuse, then we go to the police today. I have enough evidence in my car right now to have you arrested before dinner. He sat there for a long time, staring out the window at the parking lot. A family walked by. Parents with 2 small kids, heading into the diner, normal people living normal lives, not sitting in a booth deciding whether to destroy their brother or not. I need to see the documents, Richard finally said. They're being drawn up now. James Patterson will have them ready by tomorrow morning. James, Richard laughed bitterly. Of course Dad went to James. They've been fishing buddies for 30 years. He's a good attorney. He's going to make sure I have no way out, you mean? He's going to make sure this is legal and binding. But Richard, you need to understand something. This isn't about punishment. Dad doesn't want to see you in prison. I don't want to see you in prison. We want the money back, and we want you out of the business. That's it. That's it. He repeated it like the words were foreign. My career, my reputation, my life's work, just gone. But that's it. You stole from your own father. You tried to have him declared incompetent. You forged legal documents. What did you think the consequences would be? He stood up abruptly. I'll look at the documents. But I'm getting my own lawyer to review them first. That's fine. We expected that. He started to walk away, then turned back. Does Dad hate me? The question caught me off guard. Richard, does he? After everything I've done, does he hate me? I thought about the conversation I'd had with Dad last night, after we'd confirmed Richard had taken the bait with the fake stroke story. Dad had been quiet for a long time, staring at the files on his desk. I failed him somewhere, Dad had said. Something I did, something I didn't do, made him think this was necessary. Made him think he wasn't enough. That's not on you, Dad, I told him. Richard made his own choices, but I'm his father. If he felt this way, why didn't he come to me? Why didn't he just talk to me? Now, sitting in this diner booth, looking at my brother's haunted expression, I remembered those words. He doesn't hate you, I said quietly. He's disappointed. He's hurt. But he doesn't hate you. Richard nodded once, then walked out of the diner. I watched his BMW pull out of the parking lot, heading north toward his house in the suburbs. His perfect house with the perfect lawn and the perfect wife who didn't know her husband was a thief. My phone buzzed. Dad, how did it go? Me. He'll look at the documents. He's getting his own lawyer. Dad, good. That's the smart thing to do. Me. Are you okay? The typing bubbles appeared and disappeared several times before his response came through. Dad, I will be. Come over for dinner tonight? Your sister's coming with the grandkids. My sister, Michelle. She'd been living in Portland for the past 15 years, deliberately staying out of the family business drama. But when Dad had called her 6 months ago and explained what was happening, she'd flown home immediately to help document everything. I told you Richard was going to self-destruct, she'd said. I tried to warn you guys years ago. He's been jealous of you since we were kids, David. Why didn't Dad see it? I'd asked. Because Dad sees the best in people, especially his kids. It's his greatest strength and his biggest weakness. That night, gathered around Dad's dining room table with Michelle, her husband Tom, and their 2 kids, felt almost normal. Almost like we were just a family having dinner, not a family in the middle of a legal and emotional crisis. Uncle David, my nephew Marcus asked, is Uncle Richard coming to dinner? The table went quiet. Michelle gave me a look that said, handle this carefully. Not tonight, buddy, I said. Uncle Richard's got some things he needs to work through. Is he in trouble? Kids. They always knew when something was wrong. Yeah, I said, deciding honesty was better than platitudes. He made some bad choices, and now he's dealing with the consequences. But he's still your uncle, and we still love him, even when he makes mistakes. Marcus considered this seriously. He was quiet for a long time. I keep thinking about when you boys were young. Richard must have been 9. You were 13. He'd just made the school soccer team, so proud of himself. But at dinner that night, all I could talk about was your science fair project, winning first place. I saw his face fall, but I didn't stop. I just kept talking about how proud I was of you. Dad, I did that a lot, I think. Not intentionally, but Richard was always good at things that weren't as visible. He got straight A's, but that was expected. He made debate team, but that wasn't as exciting as your football games. He was responsible and steady, but you were charismatic and bold. People noticed you, and maybe I did too, more than I realized. He still made his own choices. They're negotiating some terms, but it looks like he's going to sign. They want 48 hours to finalize everything. What terms is he negotiating? Mostly around the payment schedule. He wants 25 years instead of 20, and he wants the option to pay it off early without penalty. Reasonable requests. I'm inclined to agree. What does Dad think? Tom's fine with it. He just wants this over with. 2 days later, we all met in James Patterson's conference room. Richard showed up with his attorney, Mark Sullivan, a sharp-eyed man in his 60s who'd been practicing corporate law for 40 years. Michelle had flown back in from Portland. Dad sat at the head of the table, looking older than I'd seen him look in years. The documents were spread out, page after page of legal language that all boiled down to Richard had stolen, Richard would repay, Richard would leave. Before we sign, Richard said, his voice rough, I need to say something. Mark Sullivan touched his arm. Richard, I'd advise. No, I need to say this. Richard looked around the table, his eyes finally landing on Dad. I'm sorry. That's not enough, I know. Words aren't enough. But I'm sorry for all of it. For stealing from you. For lying to you. For trying to make everyone think you were losing your mind. I'm sorry for being so consumed by jealousy and resentment that I destroyed everything we built together. Dad's expression didn't change. He just nodded slowly. I don't expect forgiveness, Richard continued. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that I know what I did was wrong. I know I betrayed your trust. I know I hurt this family, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to make it right, even though I know I never fully can. Michelle was crying quietly. I felt my own eyes burning. Richard, Dad said finally, I accept your apology, and someday maybe we can rebuild something. Not the business relationship. That's done. But maybe, eventually, we can be a family again. Not now, but someday. Richard nodded, not trusting himself to speak. The signing took 20 minutes. Page after page, Richard's signature appearing next to Dad's, making it official. $643,000 to be repaid over 25 years. Immediate resignation from Morrison Construction. Full confession to all activities. Civil agreement with no criminal charges. When it was done, Richard stood up. He looked at me, then at Michelle, then at Dad. I hope someday you can all look at me without seeing what I did, he said quietly. But I understand if you can't. He walked out with Mark Sullivan. We watched through the conference room window as they crossed the parking lot to Richard's BMW. He got in, sat there for a moment with his hands on the steering wheel, then drove away. Well, James said, gathering up the documents. That's done. Tom, I'll file these with the court tomorrow. The payment schedule starts next month. Dad just nodded, staring at the empty parking space where Richard's car had been. That was 8 months ago. Richard made his first payment on time, and his second, and his third. Every month, like clockwork, the money appeared in the account James had set up. Not a single payment missed. I haven't spoken to him since that day in the conference room. Michelle has, once. He called her on her birthday, and they talked for 10 minutes about nothing important. She said he sounded tired, but okay. Dad has struggled the most. Some days he's angry, ranting about betrayal and theft, and how Richard threw away everything for greed. Other days he's sad, wondering what he could have done differently, how he failed as a father. You didn't fail. I tell him every time. Richard made adult choices. You can't control that. But I influence those choices, he insists. Everything we do as parents influences our children. I must have done something that made him think this was necessary. Morrison Construction is doing well. Better than well, actually. Without Richard's shell corporations and fake vendor invoices, our profit margins improved significantly. I've taken over as CEO, and Dad's finally taking the retirement he'd planned, though he still comes into the office twice a week to consult. We hired a new attorney, Patricia Wong, who's methodically going through every contract Richard ever touched, making sure there aren't any more surprises waiting for us. So far, she's found 3 more instances of fund diversion, smaller amounts but still theft. James is documenting everything, just in case Richard decides not to honor the agreement. But I don't think he will. The morning Richard called to tell me Dad had a stroke, sitting across the table from my healthy, alert father, knowing we'd finally caught Richard in his own trap. I think about how satisfying it felt in that moment, having proof, having the upper hand. But then I think about the look on Richard's face in the conference room, signing away his career and his place in the family. I think about how hollow that victory felt. Watching my brother walk out of our lives. Michelle says I need to forgive him eventually. For your own sake, she tells me, not for his. Carrying around anger just poisons you. She's probably right. She usually is. But forgiveness takes time. And trust, once broken this completely, may never fully heal. For now, I run Morrison Construction with Dad's guidance. I have dinner with him 3 times a week. Michelle visits once a month with the grandkids. We're rebuilding, slowly, carefully, the family that Richard's greed fractured. And every month, that payment comes through. $643,000, divided over 25 years. $2,143.33, deposited like clockwork on the first of the month. It's not forgiveness. It's not reconciliation, but it's something. It's Richard saying, "I'm sorry," over and over again, in the only language we'll accept right now. And maybe, someday, it will be enough.